PK Wood, we discussed in the first volume your life story, the things that you've gone through, everything from abuse, seeing people using drugs in front of you at a very young age, you being abandoned at a crack house at 5 years old, break-ins, drive-bys, gang relations, growing up in the foster system. You built, as you said, a superhero out of your mom. And then you ended up meeting her after 13 years of not seeing her at the age of 18. You realized that she was still in that same space that she was when she abandoned you at 5 years old. And I'm assuming you probably held on to a lot of resentment about that, but then you ended up giving her forgiveness. And so I want to talk with you about what forgiveness looks like.
Yeah. Forgiveness. That was a word that was not in my vocabulary for a very long time. And I was a very angry child. I was a very angry young man. I was a very angry adolescent because I felt hurt by the choices that my mom initially made and by the way that I was treated in my adoptive family and frustrated with the lack of and what I didn't have and what I always wished I could have.
So
And
what does it cost you? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What does it cost you to hold on to that anger?
it cost me relationships. It cost me opportunities. It cost me peace.
And with it costing you peace, that costs you everything as well. So your mental health, your physical health, like you said, opportunities. And then I'm assuming as well, if you're dealing with that unhealed wound, because I've held on to animosity for years. And when you're dealing with an unhealed wound, you also cost yourself, like you said, opportunities, because you're always looking for somebody else's angle and what they're attempting to screw you out of, or which way they're going to let you down, how they're going to abandon you. And so what did you allow it to cost you, and at what point did you stop letting it cost you everything?
I allowed it to affect me. I had that open wound and I was bleeding, and everybody that I was around or everybody I was trying to be intimate with or truly connect with, I I'd bleed on them, and that wound would bleed, and I would take things out on them when didn't even do anything to me because I hadn't processed what had been going on from the past, and I just carried it with me like weight on my shoulder that I didn't have to. And from that affected relationships in my life with friends, with relationships, and how I could connect to people.
So you're living your life, you're holding on to this animosity, and at some point you have to have a clarifying moment in your life that you realize that you're just poisoning yourself by holding on to all of the feelings that you have towards anyone that's ever done you wrong. And it costs you everything. It's costing you your mental health, your physical health, opportunities, like you had said. And so what was that breaking point for you where you realized that you can't hold on to that poison anymore? Because I've, I've heard the saying, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting it to be toxic for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So what point did you finally decide to spit out the poison?
I was 19 years old. I had attended this personal growth and development 7-day class at a ranch, and there was an exercise where you stand on a ledge and you hang off this edge and you see just a valley. And I screamed and shouted and expressed all these hidden emotions, all this anger, hatred, and I just shouted and yelled and got every ounce of hatred that I could muster up and get out. And after, I just felt depleted of hatred, of anger, and it felt like such a relief that I'd never felt before. And I walked down the steps that led up to the edge, and there was a woman there, and she had told me that I shouldn't allow my trauma and my past experiences to dictate how my life goes. She told me that my life is a book and that I'm the author of that book, and I hold the pen and I control my own narrative.
And so if you start using that pen from a skewed point of view, where you're bitter and you're angry and you're holding on to all these things, you're going to write a drastically different story than if you're looking at clean paper with a fresh pen and a cleared mind. And on that ledge, you let go of all the preconceived notions about who you were and what's going to happen to you. And you decided instead to write your story the way that you wanted to. And that led you to going on and serving a community that's largely underserved in that foster care system, where you have these at-risk adolescents that they don't connect with their case managers a lot of times, because their case managers are, and I'm not attempting to downgrade the work that some of these folks do, but some of them just punch the clock. They clock in, they clock out, they don't care. And you're not that person. And so you went on to reach these kids. You went on to write your own success story and do your own thing. Now you're a mentor to adolescents 18 to 26, 18 to 26 that have a mental health diagnosis. And you're having great success with that because of you being able to let go of that. And so I think it's also extremely important to delineate the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Someone wise once told me, you don't forgive people for them, you forgive them for yourself. Because if you're carrying that weight, it's going to change everything for you, right? And so in that, you let that go. You realize that you are the arbiter of your future. You get to choose how this thing plays out. And so the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, to bring it back, is that in reconciliation, you're back with them. But you can forgive somebody without subjecting yourself to having to deal with them again, right?
I chose to forgive my biological mother. All of the anger that I held didn't serve me and negatively impacted everybody around me and robbed me of getting closer to relationships that I had already established, and also I allowed to rob me. And so through forgiving my mother, I worked to reconcile our relationship. So at 18 and 22, I was able to help her move to better environments. And unfortunately, the outcome that I wanted, that I expected, didn't happen. And so now I've forgiven her and established boundaries. However, I know it would not serve me to reconcile that relationship.
And that was actually going to be like the next question I was going to ask, is around boundaries. Like, what boundaries did you need to set in order for you to feel safe to let go of that feeling and to give the forgiveness?
What helped was really getting an understanding of the situation and of my mother, that it wasn't just some drug addict that abandoned a child. However, it was a woman that as a child experienced abuse from family matters, and her parents never stepped in to protect her. So she chose to cope with substances. She chose to give to anyone and everyone, and she was taken advantage of for her lack of boundaries. And at a young age, I told myself that I would never be like my mother. I would never be like the men that she chose, and I would do the opposite. And so, having the logical understanding of my mom's life, I was able to put myself in her shoes and see how hard her life was. And that's what truly allowed me to let go and choose forgiveness.
And so that's a way that you're actually able to forgive someone that doesn't change. You can forgive someone that doesn't feel sorry, possibly, for the things that they've done to you. Because again, it's not about forgiving them for them, it's forgiving them for yourself. So now that you've seen, and this doesn't have to be the norm, but now that you've seen what reconciliation can look like and where it can fail, like what are you going to do moving forward? Has it affected other relationships where maybe you're not as forgiving or you're not as willing to reconcile and integrate them back into your life?
Yeah. Before I thought forgiving and reconciliation go hand in hand. However, that's not always the case. So now, after attempting to reconcile that relationship, I understand that for me at this point in life, I cannot reconcile that relationship. However, I can forgive myself and forgive her for the past and continue to work forward. And I do currently communicate with her daily. And for me, that's as much as I need that relationship to go. And there's still an affection, there's still a love, there's still growth being done with that relationship. And as for other relationships, I had to work on forgiveness of other people, like such as being in relationships where the other partner had cheated. I was able to reflect on see where I went wrong in that relationship and where they went wrong, and being able to forgive and let go and not reconcile.
But have you forgiven yourself for your responsibilities in the situations like that?
I would say not entirely. I often do reflect on where I can do better in different situations, and forgiveness is definitely um, a a motif that constantly keeps popping up in life. And so I'd say that that's what I've been working on as of late, is working on forgiveness, not just with my biological mother, but also with my adoptive mother, and also with certain friendships, and identifying where I can improve and where I need to change.
Do you feel like forgiveness is just a one-time thing, and if they burn that bridge again, you don't rebuild it, or do you continue to rebuild, or what does that look like for you?
I think that that depends on the relationship. I do believe that you can forgive and keep that bridge burnt. And I think that you can also build that bridge again and have that reconciliation and forgiveness.
Do you think that it's hard for people to kind of delineate between forgiveness and just suppressing their feelings?
Yeah, I think anything worth having doesn't come easily,
Right.
and it's a lot easier to put up those walls and neglect those feelings and keep them hidden. However, the downside to it is it's like Mentos in a Pepsi bottle. You keep putting those Mentos in, well, eventually it's going to explode.
Right.
And it doesn't just explode straight up, it goes everywhere and gets on everybody that's close to you.
Yeah. So with that being said, I mean, obviously it's costing you something more, right? So I personally, for the longest time, did the same thing. I pushed everybody away. I was literally introducing myself to people, and within the first few seconds telling them what an asshole I was. And somebody called me out on that. I think I've talked about this before, but somebody called me out on that, and they were like, you need to stop doing that. And I was like, oh, you don't get it. You don't get it. I'm brash because I want strong people around me. So if you're weak, I don't want you around me. I need ride or dies in my life, right? But the truth is, the moment that I stopped that egotistical bullshit and I started just being who I am, somebody that wants to love people because I want people to love me, I let go of that egoic side of me and that posturing and that facade. I was embraced with open arms by so many amazing people. But it took a lot of work. And, I as well did a personal development course. And my coach, I love her to death. She, we had daily phone calls. And I had told her some information that I thought was kind of just between us. We were just rapping one day, and I had no idea she was keeping notes on me about it, right? And so there came this point where we're discussing it, and she tells me, I need you to write a letter to your ex-girlfriend, and I want you to give her forgiveness, and I want you to ask for forgiveness, and I want you to thank her for saving your life when you were starting to go into a diabetic stroke. And I broke down, dude. Oh, I was furious. I was furious that she brought that up. How dare you? But I agreed to it because of understanding all of the things that it would have cost me if I didn't do that. And so I wrote this letter, and I had panic attacks through the whole thing. And I give it to her, and I was like, I don't know how to give this to my ex. And she goes, I never said you had to send it to her. I just said you had to write it. Oh, I was furious. You got me, coach. You got me. All right. However, that ended up leading to me actually writing somebody that hurt me way worse. I was actually discussing that with Brandon before you came in. There was a very brutal situation where I got a girl pregnant while I was in the military, and I found out on Christmas Eve while I was in Iraq on the flight line that she aborted our kid behind my back. She had told me that she wasn't pregnant, and none of that made sense to me. However, I figured that she had had a miscarriage and didn't want to talk about it. And so I didn't push it with her, and we were kind of on the end of our relationship anyway. And I held on to that for years. For years, it tore me apart. And I don't have kids of my own, so that, was probably my one shot at it, right? And that being said, I reached out to her on Facebook, and I played my role in that. I apologized for my role, and I basically said, whatever situation that I created by being the way that I was, that led you to believe that getting an abortion was a better choice than having a child with me, I'm so sorry for putting you through that. And that was rough, dude. Mm-hmm. And I ended up getting back a message from her, and we ended up having a beautiful conversation. And God bless her, dude. She's married and has kids and is happy, and like, I love that for her. But I let go of so much, and my life was able to change drastically because I was no longer holding on to that. Now, am I still in communication with her? No. I don't see a purpose for that. It doesn't serve me to have a relationship with her. However, I don't need to have a negative relationship with the memory of her. And I let go of it. And it was one of the greatest things I could have done for myself, was letting go. Surrendering to the notion that I don't have the master plan. That's everything.
And what I can just hearing from you is how you phrase that in your letter, of how you apologized, of how you led her to that decision that she chose to make. And that's what I feel like it isn't talked about, is the accountability piece in forgiveness, and being able to reflect and identify where you went wrong.
100%. And when I was playing the victim of that situation, I did no wrong. How dare she? How dare she victimize me? But I had to take a serious look at it. And, I was drinking heavily back then. I was in the military. I was just a freaking wild animal. Why would you want to raise a child with that? And I'm not saying that excuses what she did, or the way that she did it for that matter.
Or is the only reason that she did it.
True. 100% true. But I did play a role in it, and I am responsible for it, because more than likely there was a path that I could have chosen that would have led her to going, this man is perfect. This is going to be the father of my child. But I didn't fulfill that obligation that would have made it a perfect situation for her, right? And so I can't control other people, but I can control my actions and I can control my reactions. That's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the only thing that I guarantee I can make right with is my apology to her.
Mm-hmm.
And then provide her the ability to feel as though she might be forgiven for any role that she played, right? I didn't come out and go, and because you did this, I forgive you, because there's no need for that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But instead, I'm a strong man. I can take full responsibility for that situation. And it's going to allow her to have a much better life where she goes, oh, yeah, he understands now. It was him that whole time. And you know what? That's okay. I don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be the hero in her story. I don't need to be the victim in my own story. I just need to be somebody who's doing something in life and is happy. And you can't be happy with regrets and animosity towards someone. You can't be happy without the forgiveness aspect of things. So
that makes me reflect. So when I was 14, there was a girl that I had met in 8th grade at a party, and that's where our relationship first started. And through the years, she got to learn about me from 14 to 24, and we were on and off through those years. And we had a very toxic relationship. We both had a lot of trauma that we hadn't dealt with or worked through, and we would take it on each other. And it was Christmas Day. It was my first Christmas with a significant other.
yeah.
And I got a call from my biological mother, who I had most recently got her out of the hood and moved her out to New Jersey.
Yeah.
And she had told me that she was in a psych ward because she had just attempted suicide and she failed.
Yeah.
And my immediate reaction was to leave her family's Christmas and book a flight. And instead, they stopped what they were doing for Christmas and tailored to what I needed at that moment. And that family had helped me through so much in my life in those 10 years that we were on and off.
Yeah.
And I'm forever grateful for them. And it got to a point where I had moved my biological mom into my apartment with my roommate at the time. And then my adoptive mom had got double pneumonia. She had got COVID, and she was on her deathbed.
Yeah.
And I did not know how to regulate or process my emotions, trying to be a parent and fix both relationships with my moms at the same time and manage a relationship. And my girlfriend at the time chose to break up with me and leave me. And initially I just felt so angry because how could you leave me with this when both my moms almost died?
Right.
And I'm stuck here doing this by myself, and you were the one person that I had. And what I had realized was that through the years, I had put a lot of stuff on her that she couldn't handle. And it finally pushed her to her breaking point. And so it took me some time to figure out that she made a choice to do what was best for her.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And just because that we had built 10 years of expectations of getting married, starting a family, and doing all of this, that just because that's not reality doesn't mean that that's not okay.
So the behavioral patterns that you had with her gave her everything she needed to walk when it got really hard.
Yeah. And that was a heartbreak I had never experienced before, because
Absolutely.
that was a young girl and a young man that were in middle school that got to know each other and see each other grow into the stages of their 20s. And it was the first woman that I'd ever been romantically involved with that I'd taught about my life story and how it went, all the way up until the point of her actually meeting my biological mother.
Yeah.
And for me, I thought, like, oh, because that event happened, this has got to be the woman I marry. This has got to be the one that I end up with.
Right.
And one thing I realized that she had always voiced that I didn't see until we had finally broken up for the last time was that the same thing I did with my mother was create expectations of who she is in my head. I did the same thing with her as a girlfriend, was build up all these expectations of who she was instead of acknowledging for who she is.
Yeah, you end up creating, like you said before, this superhero in your head. The one that's going to fix everything. The one that's going to make everything okay. The one that when you're struggling is there. Like you said in volume 1 of this, it's the person who's going to jump in front of the abuse. Whether it be some drugged out dude and your mom, whether it be life handing you some really hard stuff to go through, you're expecting this woman to be there, and she wasn't. But metaphorically, how many times is she going to get hit by life and jump in the way of that punch for you that sometimes you're starting that fight before it's understandable that she might move out of the way. And you can't fault her for it. So you let it go. You forgive her. And again, the conceptual difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Perhaps now you're mitigating your feelings a little bit more. You're not looking at her as she is the one, and instead you're just understanding that it's okay to be who you are, and I'm okay with me being who I am. And we don't have to be some preconceived notion that we've built over 10 years. But I forgive you. I love you. Don't have to carry it anymore. Done bleeding on other people, like you said.
I would add to that, it's not your mother's fault that you put her on a pedestal. Like, it makes sense that you would do that. We've all done it. We all put people on pedestals and create archetypes of them that aren't real. Children do that for obvious reasons. And the ownership of understanding that that person is not this person that I've created in their head just because I made it up about them doesn't make it true. And surrendering to the idea that they're just human and much farther from really what I've made up about them. That's a tough pill to swallow.
What I realized is that I was a superhero all along, and that I said for so many years that nobody was there. And after looking in and reflecting, I figured out that I was there the entire time, through everything.
But that's the same situation. The same hero that's inside of you is the same hero that went on to be there for children that didn't have it. You're a hero, PK. You couldn't be that if you didn't let go of the shit that you've gone through. It's as simple as that.